everybody. This is Jennifer Filzen. Welcome to Connecting with Jennifer Filzen. Today I have Karen Cornwell. We met on a LinkedIn Zoom conference, and that was super, super fun. And I know that she and I have a lot of things in common. And I thought, ooh, we have to have her on the show. So welcome, Karen Cornwell. Yay!
Thank you so much, Jennifer. I really appreciate being on the show. The video part is kind of new for me, but we'll see how it goes.
Quite all right. So tell us who you are and what's your business, and just kind of give us a little introduction of who you are and where are you at too.
So I'm an author, recently published author, but that's not where I started. I started as a hardcore engineer. And Jennifer, I knew I wanted to be an engineer when I was in the 10th grade. So I love to solve problems. That's what turned me on, right? And it's important to find out what turns you on early in life.
Amen.
And my mom was one of my biggest supporters. She was one of these women, and she fought a lot of her own battles, but she was one of these women who would tell their children, "You can be anything you want to be, honey. You'll have to work at it, but you can be anything you want to be." And I believed her. Right. And there's power in doing that, because we'll get to that in a minute. So, but along the way, I discovered I was different. So, and I'm just different than other girls. I think you said you're not a girly girl, and I've never been a girly girl, and the whole pink thing never did anything for me. And in fact, I really wanted to take apart the car. That's what I wanted to do. So I had these inclinations, and I said, I want to be an engineer. And there was a point in my life in like the 10th grade or the 9th grade where we were living in Alabama, of all places. That was a whole nother culture shock, but we won't go into that. And they weren't going to offer algebra because we were in the county school system and no one else in the whole school apparently wanted to take it. And so I had to attempt to execute a transfer of myself out of the county system into the city school system. Now, many white people wanted to do this because the city school system was whiter than the county school system.
Wow.
So at the age of, what was I, 13 or 14 then? I had to go in front of this school board, and I'll never forget this guy accusing me of wanting to go to the whiter school. And I just looked at him and I said, I'm going to be an engineer and I have to have algebra, and they're not going to teach it. So I have to go to this school. You don't understand. And he was kind of taken back because I don't think he knew that I was going to speak that way to him, right? So
Good for
anyway,
you.
I did get
up for yourself. Yeah.
well, and it was like, no, I can't, get into college without taking this class. So
Hello. I
anyway,
know, and algebra is so basic. I did not do so well in algebra. I am the writer. I am not the mathematician. But let me tell you how much I appreciate you mathematicians and engineers, because we would not be doing this video conferencing call without your hardcore work. Thank you very much.
it would have been much harder.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. And
So I got transferred, and
what
I
year was this? If you don't mind me asking, what was in
oh,
the
we're back in the
1970s?
70s. We're back in the 70s. So, and I'll never forget too, going, the last year of high school, I was with, some other gals that were in my social circles, and one of them said, "What are you going to do after school, Karen?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm going to college." "Oh, what are you going to study?" Right? That's what everybody asked. And I said, "Engineering." And then their face went, "Why?"
Oh man.
And it was one of those, why would you even ask why?
Oh, you were so far ahead of your time.
Well, but I was shocked at their reaction. But then, as I look back, most of the girls I went to high school with in Alabama, there was only one thing that was important, and that was to get that ring and then answer the big question. Should we live in a trailer behind your parents' house or my parents' house? And it was like, no, I'm not doing that, and I'm also not going to go work for 7-Eleven, thanks. So, although I did do that in college for a summer.
Well, hey, I think we've all done the jobs to appreciate the jobs that would come later, right?
Yes, you
Yeah,
have to. I think you have to. I don't think you have an appreciation if you haven't done that.
exactly. So, all right, before you get into and where do you live now?
I'm very close to you. I'm in Santa Clara, California.
Gotcha. Okay, so we're okay. Bay Area. I've got Monterey Bay, and you've got San Francisco Bay. Okay, so let's talk about how women have gone through this journey. Now, for anybody watching, I am not a male basher at all. I love my men. I love my brothers in arms. My husband, of course, I adore him. So this is not male bashing at all. But to have two women share their experiences of what it was like to follow relatively non-traditional. I'd say, Karen, you were definitely more hardcore than me, but like,
Well, but you were non-traditional too, I think.
yeah. So I wouldn't trade any of it because I wouldn't be the person that I am today without it.
Exactly.
But I also recognize that you and I and all the women like us stand on the shoulders of the women who came before us, who paved a little bit easier path, and the newer generations, millennials, Gen Z, and the ones that will be coming after them are standing on our shoulders, right?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. There's
And
there's so much that's changed for
oh,
women.
for sure. And also too, the men that have evolved and grown up with us and matured with us and been our brothers and friends and mentors and helped us
Yes.
rise up. We are very grateful. But it is interesting. Um, I am the person I am today because I've heard over and over and over again, Jenny, you can't do that. You're a girl. Watch me.
Ah, see, I didn't hear that. I had my mom was different, right? She said, "Oh,
Exactly.
you can do anything you want. It might not be easy, but you can do it."
And not just I think part of it wasn't any malice. I think it was just trying to protect me, trying to protect,
Oh,
right? Oh, you
yes.
can't do that. My cousins, they would have the go-karts and they'd go racing, and I'm like, I want to go-kart racing.
Oh, no.
No, no, you can't do that. You're a girl. Girls don't do that. I'm like, dang, man, go-kart racing. So I had to wait until I hit my 40s to buy my Mini Cooper Countryman. That's my adult go-kart.
I love it. Oh,
Yeah,
Jennifer, I love it.
right. And I wanted to play the drums when I was 10 years old. And my
Oh,
parents were guitarists, but our family friends, they were such a huge influence on me, this particular family. The mom was an opera singer. I would eventually go into singing opera. The
wow.
husband was an ophthalmologist by day, jazz drummer by night. And I remembered sitting at his kit, looking at this just broad array of drums and snares and even the cymbals and the wind chimes, the chimes, and like all these different things. And I was just like, oh, I want to do this. And my family's like, uh-uh. So everything I wanted to do was not
No.
traditional, and even not having children. Oh, when are you gonna have kids? I'm not. Why? Because I taught seventh grade and it was the best form of birth control ever.
And I'm laughing so hard because I have not one but two seventh graders right
Right?
now.
You
Okay,
know what
so
I'm talking
I
about.
totally get that.
I know. But with that said, I do love my friends' kids, and I love them when they do hit teenage years because I can teach them how to drive stick. I can teach them how to play the drums.
Oh,
I can teach them all the
cool.
fun things, and then I hand them back to the parent.
You can take your attitude and go home with it too.
Right, right. So what you saw was your friends, your female friends probably were getting the same kind of stuff like I was at their homes. Like,
Oh,
this is your
definitely.
path. This is where you're supposed to go,
Oh,
you know.
yes,
And so, and I keep wondering, like, there is a whole generation, several generations of women that really weren't allowed to truly be themselves. They had to support others. They had to,
definitely.
go along with what was best for the family or the husband or the job or whatever, but they weren't allowed to really shine their light so brightly. And I can't help but wonder if alcoholism is a big part of tamping things down and quieting that inner voice. I can't help but wonder if that's like a
Oh, I don't wonder. I would definitely know that, right? Because you can't continuously suppress someone. They have to attempt to let it out somehow, and I think alcohol is a way to go, okay, I'll just have a drink, thanks. We've
right.
all had a day like that, but that I think that's definitely where some of that comes from.
Yeah. So the first question I always like to ask, and we're already kind of doing this, but what makes you special and unique? And I think you touched on it. Your mom kind of started you there,
Yes.
right? But
Oh,
tell me more.
she set me up for that. She totally set me up for that. And then, she continued to support me, right? So I went on and I, took engineering and I made it through those 4 years, right? And then I got a job working for GE, which
What'd
was
you do?
wonderful. And
What'd
I
you do?
got to come back to San Jose, California. You know the song, Do You Know the Way to San Jose? Well, that was about when it came out, and nobody knew the way to San Jose. And it wasn't, it didn't have the skyline. Are you kidding? There was no skyline. None of that was there.
It was
So
Valley of Heart's Delight. It was an orchard. Yeah,
that's right.
driving.
It was full of orchards and things. So, but I took my first job there and I ended up staying there 17 years. I had some of the most marvelous bosses who were, and the older I got, the more I look back and realize how special they were, right? Because sometimes when you have the wonderful, you don't know what it is until you had the awful right on the other side. But I got my full share of that. So I spent about 17 years there, and I went into their exclusive engineering training program. It's where you take these rotational job assignments, you work everywhere for 6 months, and you go to another job, and then so you get to see parts of the company. We also got to get our master's degree from Berkeley, which was really handy. It was painful, painful,
I would imagine
but
Berkeley. Well, it's a tough school. It's a public school, but it's still an Ivy League school. So yeah.
and it's tough. It's not easy. So that was all good. I got some of the best leadership training being part of this leadership program. I got to go to their New York Crotonville facility. And there's something special when the people in the class look up and they're like, "Oh, I hear it," and I'm like, "You hear what?" "It's the helicopter. Bring it in, Jack Welch. He's talking this afternoon." And they would just helicopter him over, and the helicopter would land, and then in 5 minutes he would be standing there talking to you. And it was kind of like, whoa, I didn't expect that to happen. So there was some really super awesome things that I got to experience with that. And you kind of, when you start work, you get the technical stuff down first, right? And then you kind of start working on about how does the business work, and then eventually you get into how does this whole people thing work, right? And so you climb up the ladder and you work through those things. And for the most part, during those years, like I said, I worked with the most amazing boss. He was phenomenal, and of course didn't really realize that. But eventually I ended up running my own profit and loss center at the company, and it was the biggest, it was the most profitable one they had. So I haven't told you what I did though. So the division of GE that I worked for was nuclear. So in the end, we were designing and making nuclear power plants more effective, more efficient, and easier to operate, right? Because if a plant keeps tripping offline, it gets really irritating really fast. So we would go in and rearrange things to make it easier to operate and to make plants produce more power. And that was the crown jewel job of it was my job to raise the licensed output of the nuclear plant above what it was originally designed for, and make sure that all the equipment and all the pieces and all the things that hooked together worked together, right? So, it's a mammoth undertaking, and it requires massive amounts of teamwork, and it requires a lot of people that cross from one function to another function and communicate back and forth and make sure that they're understanding each other. Because, well, if it's a nuclear power plant, you really want people to understand each other, right?
This is a big deal. You cannot have failure of communication.
No, because it won't, it won't work.
Right.
So I learned, I think that one of the secrets that I learned there was, how do you communicate across functions with people enough to get a common understanding? And then I would do that and face many different functional groups, right, to pull all this stuff together. So we were these big aggregators, right? And we'd pull all this stuff together to make all of this happen. And it takes some time, and there are a lot of language barriers, and it's not, English, Spanish. He's an electrical engineer and this is a nuclear engineer, and they have whole different languages, right? So, but it is like different languages, because you have to figure out how you can actually connect and communicate with each other, right? And so that was, I think, probably, from that position, that ability was probably one of the strongest things, and it's what I currently use today, for the work that I'm doing now, right? Which doesn't have a whole lot to do with engineering anymore. So that was kind of an interesting little bit. But along the way, there's always these little funny things, and you never know the significance until years go by, right? And so I'm a high potential, and they throw opportunities at you to test you, right? And GE was very good about this. And they said, "Oh, Karen, we want you to run our first diversity council." And I said, "What's a diversity council? And what exactly are they supposed to do?" And they looked at me and said, "That's what you need to figure out, because it's a stretch assignment. Have at it." Right? I'm like, okay, but that would be a pivot point, and I wouldn't pivot for years, right? But that was a pivot point, and we ran that council for a couple of years. I co-led it with another gal. And at the time, this was in the 80s, right? We were building plants all over the world. So we focused on cultural diversity, right? Because we had engineers that were going all over the place, right? So it was like, okay, get the cultural thing right, because we are crossing those barriers. And, it's a funny thing that we realized as we went on, everything that spoke of diversity, the leadership team would hand to us and say, "Here, this is your problem. Here, here's another one for you." And it was like, and what we understood finally was that they were abdicating their responsibility. They weren't learning a damn thing about how to deal with diversity. They were just handing it over to us. And this went on for a couple of years, and we went, they're not getting it. It's not sinking into their heads. So we made the fateful decision, right, to say, we quit. Then I will never forget that day, or all the meetings that led up to that, to get the team to go in and say, "You know what? Because of us, you are not learning anything. So we quit. You guys need to understand some of this." And I honestly thought, the look on your face tells it all. Are you going to get fired?
Yeah,
Are you going to get fired? They
I'm
didn't
dying
fire
to
me.
know what happened, because that must have been one hell of a meeting.
Well, it was. It was very exciting. But they didn't fire me, right? So I'm like, oh, okay. And to this day, I still think we did the right thing, because, in fact, more and more so, I know we did the right thing, because that's part of what's not happening right now, right? Is the leadership team is not getting it. And until they get it, things won't change. And so that's a really important piece to go along with that, right? So that's kind of a couple of my, what makes me unique. And after that, I bounced from several different jobs in Silicon Valley. I changed industries twice. And again, that skill of how do you talk to people and understand what they do, and then, talk to other people and then connect them together. That's the skill I think that I have used throughout my career to
Bravo.
make things happen together. So that has been exciting. But, along the way, I watched a lot of women get pushed out. I
Let's
watched
talk
a
about
lot of
that.
women leave,
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
and it
Let's talk
wasn't
about
that they didn't like the work. They
Well,
didn't like the environment.
well, here's the other thing too. Like the way you describe your job and how you were treated and all these opportunities that came to you, you're kind of like a unicorn. You lived a very magical, beautiful, I'm sure
I
you had
did.
your
No, I did.
challenges.
Because you're a high potential, I was totally, everybody loves you and all this stuff goes to you, but I watched a lot of women that didn't have that. I
Right.
watched a lot of women that got shoved to the sidelines. I watched a lot of women that, that took so much abuse that they literally went, I don't want to do this anymore. It's not fun. But
So
these
that's
women loved the work. What they
yes.
didn't love was the environment, right? So,
Yes.
and
Okay.
that
This
broke my heart.
that's what I want. That's where I wanted to go. Who do you serve in your life? You are doing your best, if I recall, through your book and through what you're doing in this chapter of your life to create positive and supportive environments for women in the workplace. Yes?
Yes, oh,
All
totally.
right. How
So
are you doing it? Because that's like a magic
when
secret
I
code to crack.
oh, it is. It was, and if you had told me when I got out of college that I would be doing this now, I would have told you you're nuts. No way. Not happening. So I finally left corporate America in, I don't know, 2014, 2015, right? I had had enough. I mean, I was up to way here to it. And I started my own consulting business, but I started out doing product management and sales consulting because that was my forte. That was what I was really good at. So it was a really natural just step right into it and go. And I really love that. But I had been researching gender differences for years since that first diversity council. And I was at another company and I was on their diversity council, right? And so I watched the same cycles go through. And you see it a couple times and you go, I've seen this before. I know what this looks like, right? So, and then I got how I got there, and then I had kids. Now I was the dedicated career engineer, right? No time for children, no time for husbands, no time for any of that stuff. So I had my first child at age 45. And thank God for medical technology, or I would not have any children. Okay. And then I had the twins at 47.
Wow.
So, well, my plate got a little bit full, right? And then I started elementary school, right? The kids go to school and we send them to a parent participation school. So you spent time in the classroom, and I was a field trip. I was the best field trip driver, right? And you chaperone the kids. And this school is amazing because they did overnight camping trips, and they spend a night on a ship in San Francisco, and so they're out there, right? It's seriously cool stuff. But you listen to the teachers and you listen to yourself in the classroom. No, life really needs to be fair. So we need to not do that. We need to do something else. Now, what is it that we should do? Right. And you kind of talk them through these things. And then, I'm working and I'm going to elementary school and I'm like, we're lying to these children. Life is not fair. Life has never been fair. Right. And I said, we can't keep doing this. That is not fair, because you know what? One day these little boogers are going to grow up and they're going to look you right in the face and they're going to go, you lied to us.
Mm,
You told us the world is fair and we believed you. And then we get out in the workplace and look at all this craziness, right? And this is not, how could you lie to us, Mom? And I could not deal with that. That I just emotionally And so while I was working in my one consulting business, I'm starting the other one and I'm doing the research to write the book. And right, it's, you can never do one job, like you fully well know. I think you have what, 4 or 5 now, right?
I like to stay busy. Yes, yes.
Well, okay, you're really busy. So I really work for two groups of people. I work for corporate America, because what amazes me, and back when I was at GE, I had a team and we didn't have all these encumbrances, right? So I had a team that was so linked and so connected and so integrated with itself that they were scary what they would do. And the things that they did even blew me away. I'd say, can you do this? And they'd come in here, way up higher going, wow, that's amazing, right? And the amount of innovation and the amount of creativity and the amount of just engagements, I mean, my team, we were known to have the best parties. Can you imagine being the group that had the best party? A lot of people were pissed off. This is not a party, Karen. This is work. Yeah, well, people work better if we party a lot. So sorry, we're having another party. So, that's what we did, right? But you get so much more growth and engagement. It's incredible what people can do when they're in their own space and they don't feel like they're being suppressed and crushed by other things, right? So that's the first group I work for, because they really need this innovation now, right? I mean, that's one of the things that people are starting to run really short on. But the second group, of course, I work for is it's women, but it's also society, because when women are happier, right, everybody's happier, right? So I say women, but there's kind of all of society behind that, right? And in particular, I think the next generation of women, right? Because it's going to take a while to change where we're at, and some progress has been made, but I don't think we've gotten through what we really need to get through yet, right? I think we've scratched the surface. We've done a lot of good things, but a lot more needs to happen. And unfortunately, what needs to happen is it needs to happen in all of our heads.
Yes,
And so this is not, you can't go in and tweak the org structure and make this fix. It's in your head and their head and their head. It's in your head. And
yeah.
that's hard. That's hard because, and of course, as you know from my book, you can't fix what you can't see. You won't fix it if you don't think there's a problem. That would be kind of ridiculous to do, right? So that's where we are with that. So,
Amazing.
and the number of women that left, I think the statistic is 50% of women with a technical degree leave their chosen field within 10 years. 50% leave within 10 years. And
That's
I'm like, these people went through at least 4 years of college, and
yeah,
many, had PhDs. So,
yeah.
they had invested a significant amount of time, and then to have them leave, and I have never yet had one that told me I didn't like the work. Almost all of them tell me I loved the work. I hated the environment.
Oh, heartbreaking. And
And
it's so interesting because society will often put the onus on the woman as if, well, she wanted to be a mother and therefore she left of her own volition. Not true.
do not believe the exit interviews. What are
Right.
women taught? What are women taught, right? Do
Get
you
along.
always tell the truth? No, you don't tell the truth, right? Sometimes you just smile and go, oh no, it'll be fine, when you really want to rip someone's head off, right? And so, why would you don't burn that bridge? Maybe you have to come back for some reason. So you're not going to burn that bridge, right? I mean, women are not stupid. So they don't tell the truth, and that's part of the problem, right? That's a piece. So everybody's got some changing to do, and a piece of it is for women to stop being so nice,
You
right? And
know,
to say, really, when they leave a company, the reason that I'm leaving is this guy is a jerk. And I told you he was a jerk, and you chose to do nothing about it. And I cannot live in this caustic environment any longer. Therefore, I'm going somewhere else. And because until I think people start hearing some of that, they are not going to do the change that they need to do, right? And it's a culture change, right? It's hard. This is hard stuff. So,
Yeah. And it
but
is,
if you remove that pain, amazing things can happen. And that's what I really, that's where I really want to get to, because I mean, I look at all these young people, right, getting engineering degrees and getting computer science degrees, and I'm like, oh, but I'm realizing that 50% are leaving, right?
oh
And it's
no.
like, no, right? So it's, and that's, hell on them too, because they, kind of have to back up, start over, new career. It's, it's painful. So it's wasteful in society that we're forcing women out when we
Mhm.
don't have to. And we shouldn't, right?
So a lot of times people will remain silent because they are worried about the repercussions, the burning of the bridge.
Oh,
If I speak
yes.
my mind, I might lose this client, I might get fired, I might upset my husband. There's like so many different things. And then when you finally, whoever you are, male or female, when you finally reach a point where you're like, I don't care if I lose, I'm going to speak my mind, or when you know that you're in a safe enough environment that you're all equal and you can speak your heart, right? um, two little stories about that. One, I'm part of a committee and we share Google Docs, and I am the writer, so I'm just the naturally fast typist, but I am the lone female in this particular group.
Uh,
And the guys were like, oh, yeah, and make sure that we do this. And I said, you know what, guys? The beauty of Google Docs is that we can all share this document and see it in real time. So go ahead and log in. Please do not assume that I am the secretary. We can all write from the same
you could write.
and we can see, and especially if you have something you really want to have written down in a specific way, I think
Put
it's
it in.
best that it come from you. And you know what was so beautiful, Karen, that they didn't balk. They were like, okay, like they were
We could
very
do
kind
that.
about it. And it's true. It's like technology. Hello, this isn't just one typewriter, girls and boys. This is like,
Yes.
in the cloud. The other thing that I wanted to tell you about was just yesterday, and we are in February of 2021 on Zoom calls. Like this is about educating technicians in the auto body collision repair industry, and how there is a lack of people signing up for this career in the vocational schools, and how
Oh,
do
is
we,
there? I didn't know that.
yeah, automotive technicians, they're an uptick. A lot of things, but auto body, for whatever reason, has a downtick. So there was a woman presenting, and she's doing this in partnership with the man who is older and taking the lead role. And he made a comment publicly on the Zoom call of, she was on mute. And he goes, oh, it's kind of a good thing we've got you on mute, honey, kind of thing. And it was so funny because we're in the chat and I can hear her. And as at the same time I'm typing this, she says it. We both, I'm writing and she says it. That's not funny, George.
And we
Because
have,
I know a lot of people think that it's funny. They're just trying to, but it's so ingrained that it's like, don't you see that once again you're doing death by a thousand paper cuts? Like,
yeah.
stop it.
And they
Keep your
don't. They
peer.
don't sometimes, because women haven't spoken up. And we got to speak up. That's,
Yeah. And so it was
and
funny
men
because we
can
both,
speak up too, right? I mean, that's really powerful too. There's a thing I learned from Adam Grant, right? And when somebody makes some kind of a, snide, caustic remark, he says, look at them and say, what did you mean by that? And don't necessarily make them answer, because what you really want them to do is think about what exactly did you really mean by that? What was your intent?
yeah.
Because it makes you think and you go, oh, well, maybe because one thing to be told that you're wrong, but when you look and go, oh, maybe that wasn't the right thing, when you do it to yourself, it's a little bit more self-correcting, right? It happens faster.
So in your book, are you teaching people how to speak? Like how are you helping folks see the way and to create a positive environment? Are you doing that in your book? The
Yes.
how-tos?
So what the book really consists of is there's a whole bunch of background, which is helpful because I go into neurology and some other things, right, that most people don't have a basis
Back
to.
it up with
But you don't
science.
need to know that much. You
Yeah.
need to know a little, but not, it's not mountain, right? So I put in a little bit. And then I go through numerous dichotomies. And I don't talk about men and women because one of the things that I finally discovered is one of the reasons I was so successful as an engineer is because I function like a man. For whatever reason, it doesn't, in some areas, and in other areas, I completely flip, right? So I couldn't label these things men and women because it didn't work. So I labeled them community minded and independent minded.
Yes.
Right. And I'm
Love
just
those.
independent minded as hell. Right. I was born that. Who knows why I'm that? It doesn't matter why. Right. It's just I'm all the way over here. And, the community minded, it's whether it's all about me and what I want to get done and that I want to maintain my independence, or is it all about the community and what we need to do? Right. And it's how your mind works. And I think you can shift it a little bit, but I think it's kind of how you are, right? So there's things that can change. But so the book goes through and I talk about those two opposing, right? And I get them as far apart as I can. So the two opposing pieces. And when you see for similar things how these two interact, right? You go, oh. So the independent minded always talk about I, me, right? Because that's how they think. I mean, that's literally the perception that they have, right? And the community minded, it's we, right? It's all about us. Well, put them in an interview. So you get a woman in an interview and she goes in and she talks about, well, my team that did this and this group did that, and there is no me. Well, if you're very independent minded, you're like, I don't give a crap what your team did. What did you do? Well, she doesn't talk like that. And it's not that she doesn't do that, it's just she doesn't talk like that. So it instantly gets misinterpreted I teach you about the two, and then you can see the difference. And when you see the difference, then you can go, oh, okay, this we, but she led that team, right? So, what she's not doing is saying, I led the team.
Right.
And it's the difference is sometimes in language, right? And in how people frame things in their head. And once you understand there's kind of two, right, diametrically opposed ways to do it, you can start to see it all the way across the spectrum and kind of go, okay, I see where that person's coming from. And you can take a different approach,
Beautiful.
right?
Just beautiful.
So it makes it interesting. And I look at several sets of dichotomies. I look at how we process information. I look at how we perceive the world, and I look at what we value. Okay, because there's totally different things. And when you understand that, oh, that person is really valuing this and not this, which I value, then you can figure out how do we have a conversation and actually get engaged and communicate with each other, which is, something we need to do in order to kind of get through those things. So that's kind of what the book is about. I also talk about what leadership needs to do because there's a whole list of things that leadership teams have the power and capability. And of course, one of the number one is to get the leadership team to understand this, that this is in their best interest, right?
Yeah.
And it's the best thing you can do for your company. And the data, of course, I got a ton of data in the book, right? The data just pans that out left, right, and sideways, and it continues to roll in that same direction. So why you wouldn't just do this for pure dollar and cents business reasons? You don't have to care about anybody. Pure dollar and cents business reasons, because I have the most efficient business. You would do this in a second. So,
Nice.
but it's
Wow.
it's been a great journey. And I know you wrote a book too, right? So you know that it's easy, right? It's no problem.
For me, it is. I wrote my book in 42 days, but it'd been
I'm
brewing in
totally impressed.
hold up though. Here's the secret sauce. It'd been brewing in my head for years, and pretty much I'm doing what I did in there is share the stories of my clients. So it was just a matter
Cool.
of picking the fruit from the tree of what I wanted to represent. But then so I share, it's called the Give to Get principle, and I share in there the secret sauce things that they did, establishing reciprocity and giving before expecting to receive. And they created raving fans, and they're the champions in their markets.
Yes.
And so, it's like, what can you give? It doesn't always have to be money. It can be a smile. It could be asking, hey, last time we saw you, you went on vacation. Tell me how it was. It's the relationship thing. But then the second half of the book is showing the how to's. Okay, do you want to get to the level that these business owners did? Great, here's what you need to do.
Ah, okay. Okay.
Yeah. But your book just sounds so fascinating. Remind us, what is it called?
It's called You Can't Fix What You Can't See, an eye-opening toolkit to cultivate gender harmony in business.
Oh, that is so cool. Is that it behind you? Yeah, that's it behind you. Bring it
Yes,
up
that's it
close.
behind me.
Bring it up closer to the camera. I want
Oh,
everyone to see.
wow. An
There you
author should
go.
always have her
There
book
you
right behind me,
go.
right? So,
There you
so
go. And it's available on Amazon, yes?
it's available on Amazon. And in fact, I'm thrilled to let you know that I just released the audiobook. So that was the
Ooh!
pandemic. If you really want to have fun, try recording an audiobook in a house with 5 people that are trapped.
Oh boy. Oh boy,
So,
that must have been interesting. Where'd you do? Go into your closet and do this? How'd you do it?
no, I actually did it in the office and I barricade myself in, but I found the teenage boys could not be on video games because they could not suppress the urge to scream and yell at the other players, right? So, and there were many pieces of the recording that had to be re-recorded. I was really happy about that, right?
Oh, that is hilarious.
So,
It's
but it did get done finally.
well, how long did it take you to do the audiobook version?
They actually encouraged us to like only record a chapter every couple of days because they don't want your voice. And I have such a lovely voice anyway, right? It sounds just like a man.
No, honey, you're fine.
And there's stories, and I don't know if I told this one in the book, probably not. But I once went to see the vice president of HR, right? And I thought, we're going to have a career discussion. Awesome. I wonder what great things are going to happen to me. And we talked about all kinds of stuff, right? And then he looked at me and he says, and Karen, I think you could have surgery on your voice and you could raise it up to a level so you would sound like a woman.
Wow.
And then,
Really?
there was nothing in my engineering career that taught me how to respond to that. It's like, really? Oh. And now that I'm a speaker, everybody's like, "Oh, you have a fantastic voice for this," and I'm
Actually,
like,
you know what's interesting? You know what? One of my
"What?"
no. Okay. So in the dance world, we have dance conventions,
Oh
and
yeah.
the majority of the MCs are men. So I told one of my mentors, a man, that I wanted to learn how to be an MC. That's what got me into Toastmasters. It's like that was essentially the onus. I wanted to have my own event and be the MC. And I'm sure he didn't mean any malice by it. He was speaking from the heart, but it really was just kind of, it's one of those things like, you can't do this, you're a girl kind of thing. And I'm just like, oh, screw you, watch me. He said to me, he said to me, the problem with a woman's voice in a big ballroom full of people and trying to be the MC is that the voice is higher and therefore it becomes more shrill and it's harder to hear. So I don't believe, Jen, that you would be good on the mic. So I
Says
get it.
Jen from her mic.
Yeah, right. But I do remember sales training calls. I was doing a lot of telemarketing and I really excelled at it. And one of the coaching warm up things that my coach told me to do was do vocal exercises. And I always was a singer, so I kind of got it. It was like doing your scales. You do
Right.
when you're doing opera, you go up high so you can get those high notes, right? But in this particular sales call training, it was oh,
Go low. Go
oh,
low.
and therefore drop your voice down to a lower register. So when you're on the phone, so I get it. I understand that when I consciously lower my voice and I am in a ballroom and I speak on a lower register, it it hits differently. But when I get excited, I'm like, ah, you know.
It goes up. Yes, it'll do what it naturally does. I love it. I love
But
it.
you're absolutely right. You have a lovely voice. I know that you're female. Please don't take those things that you heard to
No,
heart.
it's just it's one of those things that you hear one and then you go the total opposite. It's like, oh, you can really throw people off when you make comments like that, right?
And again, I'm sure that person meant no harm, but dang.
Right. And it was one of those that, it's kind of like you throw yourself back on the couch and you go, I'm going to have a drink over this one. Maybe two.
Right? Right? It's so fast. Gosh, you're so good. I have more questions for you, but you've given
Go
us
for it.
you've given us such delightful scoops of ice cream of deliciousness that I just want to enjoy each scoop because you really are a unicorn and you've accredited it to the fact that you kind of think like a man, you kind of sound like a man. Obviously you don't. You're but you it sounds like you related well and you were
Well,
cared
and I,
for in your environment because
yes.
there wasn't a conflict of communication with you. They were like, she's one of us. She can do things that we can't because she's got boobs and hips. Let's have her lead, but she can still communicate. Like she's one of us. She's our sister.
Well, and
She's
I do tend to communicate like a man. I'm very direct. And I came out that way, right? And so I think it was easier for the guys. I was one of the guys, right? I just was one of the guys, right? I mean, I didn't look like one of the guys, but I acted like one of the guys, and that was, that's halfway, right? So that's enough. They're engineers after all, right? So
yeah, yeah. And to that point, I've always related to the guys very well. They're truly like brothers of mine. Like I just love hanging out with guys. In fact, I remembered in my younger years, I don't know if you ever came across this, but in my younger years, I didn't quite have the socialization skills just yet. I was still very rough around the edges, and I found that the girls were rather petty and catty and kind of, but the guys weren't like that. So I tended to gravitate toward the dudes because I could have real conversations. And
yes.
if there was an issue like, it was forgotten about or moved on the next day, whereas the girls would have this reservoir of stuff to throw at. It wasn't until college. I do have my best friend still from seventh grade, but like I would just say, generally speaking, I didn't finally start having a slew of girlfriends that I hung out with until college. Well, how was it for you? Did you find that you had no issues or did
No,
you?
I was in the band. That sucks up all your time. I played the trumpet, just just let you know where I came from, right? What do you want to play?
Trumpet.
Trumpet.
Awesome. Yeah.
So,
Trumpet's
I
awesome.
had the band. I was busy, right? I mean, you're going to college, you have to have good grades, you have to do the studying, right? So that was kind of the education kind of absorbed all my time.
That's cool.
It's
That is
it's a
really
long
cool.
it's a long road.
Right? Okay. So the next question I want to ask is, what is your why? Because I mean, gosh, you just bring so much to the table. But what is it that makes you get up every day and say, I have to do this? I have a higher purpose. What is that higher purpose?
and and I finally found it, which is amazing to me. I love tech. I absolutely love tech, and I'm still standing, right? I made it. I lived through it. And many others didn't. Many fell, right? Many were pushed, many fell, many were ignored, many were not respected until they finally left, right? And I think all this is caused by these gendered differences, right? And I honestly believe if you lay out a model, people can get the two sides, then they can have entirely different conversations about what really matters. And from an
Independent
engineering
minded,
perspective,
community minded. Is that what you mean?
yes, those two sides. And if you really understand those, you can get into, you crawl down a layer deeper into what you're talking about. Because a lot of people, they'll argue about, no, it's this way, no, it's that way, no, it's this way. And if you go, what assumptions are you making? And you crawl down into those assumptions, you'll find out where you disconnect. And then you can say, okay, which way is right? And that's really important to do. Like if you're developing a product, and you have an assumption about how your customer is going to use it and somebody else has a totally different assumption, well, you better go talk to some customers and figure that out, because actually one of you is probably right and one of you is not. And if you design it for the not, you're hosed, right? And if you get the right, but if you don't drive down and have that conversation, and that's why we have so many products that people make that nobody buys. That they made a sensor right in the refrigerator to look to see when your milk gets so low so that, you can automatically order it. But this is not a problem anyone really has, right? I mean, that's not, when it comes to buying food, that's not the problem, right? I mean, it's an ingenious solution and it's gorgeous and it's beautiful, but that's not, the problem is what's for dinner. And then what do I need to make it, right? The problem is not, do I not have any milk, right? The problem is different. So, they made a beautiful solution, but nobody's ever going to use it. Maybe eventually somebody will use it, but when you crawl down into that deeper layer of how things actually work, then stuff really happens, right? So my
Yeah.
goal is to change companies so they're more gender savvy. And that's going to be the mission. I don't know, for the rest of my life, right? Well, I also have a goal to be a better photographer, but that's work in progress.
Okay. Okay. So all right. I see that when talking to you, and I know where you're coming from, I'm so excited by what you're doing. But when I just read your marketing around what it is that you're doing, if I were an executive of a company, in my heart, I'd be like, she's going to tell me what's wrong with me, and I don't want to be wrong.
Well,
So how do
and
you overcome that?
it's not wrong. That's the whole thing, that there are always and there will always be many, many perspectives. And the more you know and the more you understand, the more likely you are to be able to get things together right. Okay, so it's not about being wrong. It's about understanding all these different perspectives. And when you form your world that way, then you go, now I see a different solution. Melinda Gates and her book, which just is not coming to my mind.
That's okay. Melinda Gates, we all know her. She's amazing.
Yes, Melinda Gates, her latest book. And she said in the book, she said, I'm in India and this woman is talking and she'd had her baby in one of the clinics, right, that Melinda the Gates Foundation had created so that, the kids would really get off to a good start. And she's talking to her, right? And she's holding this newborn baby and the mother looks at her and she says, "You know what? The problem is I don't know that my husband and I can afford to feed this child. So would you take him? Because that's the only way I'll actually know that this baby will have a really good start."
Oh my gosh, that's heartbreaking.
But that was when Melinda Gates went, I solved the wrong problem. I helped these women have healthier babies and I should have been working on birth control.
Yeah.
So they only had the babies that they could feed, right?
Mm.
And that was when she pivoted.
Wow.
So if you don't have that perspective, right, that's the perspective that makes you pivot into the winning company, the winning product, the winning, whatever, right? Is when you see it all and you go, ah, now I get it. Now I can do it. So perspective is really important because nobody wants to be wrong. And in this case, we created this as a society. It
Mm.
evolved, and I talk about that in the book, but it evolved, and it's where we are, and we're going to have to create it different to get out of it, right?
It's part
And
of the
allow
evolution.
everybody.
You're right. It's not that it's wrong. It's just how the evolution has been going. But if we want to reach to the next level, we need to step it up.
That's what it's going to take, something else, because I mean, for 30 years we've been fixing this problem. Since I graduated from college, we've been fixing this problem, but it isn't fixed. It isn't even close to fixed. And
Wow.
actually in computer science, it was more fixed when I graduated from college than it is now. Right?
Dang.
So that's kind of scary. That's really bad. So,
Oof. So here's a question for you. We all learned so much when that beautiful movie, Hidden Figures.
oh, I
The
love that movie.
Such a great movie. The ladies, of the black women who were the computers working for NASA and helped the men get to the moon. I mean, it was just such a great story. I remembered watching that with my grandmother, and we were just like, wow. And this had been going on in what, the 60s? Yes, the
Oh yeah,
60s.
this is back further. Yeah.
Yeah, and the struggles that we went through to become full-fledged engineers and all that stuff, right? And so you're absolutely right, Karen. There have been generations and decades of women pushing forth and the men supporting them, you know,
There
to
are
to
many
move
men that support this, and
many
there are
men.
many now,
Yeah,
especially now.
for sure, for sure.
But
Now,
we're in COVID.
well, that's what I was going to go. There's where I'm going to go. Okay, here we go.
December through December of 2020, 5 million women have been put out of work. 5 million women, much higher than men. And of course, the reason is I interviewed somebody on my podcast, and they said our employees feel like they're trying to do everything and they're failing at everything.
Yes.
And when a woman does that, they say, look, okay, something's got to go. I can't get rid of the kids, right? I can't throw them
Yep.
out, right?
Girl. Perhaps
So,
we would
so the
rent them
job
out.
goes, right. So I rent them out. That'll be really good. Here, do you want a 3-year-old? So, and I applaud the men who may have decided that they're the ones who are going to stay home and deal with the kids. I totally applaud those men, but clearly many more women have stepped out of the job. So this has thrown us back into maybe where we were. And now realize there's women out of the jobs. So these companies don't have the benefit of that diversity of thought. So they've taken a giant step backwards, but they don't know it. And the women, of course, are doing something else, right? So they're not growing and being in a career, and they probably want to be. This was probably, if it hadn't been for COVID, they wouldn't have said I'm quitting now, right? So it's going to take even more to recover from this because this is a big setback.
Yes.
So
Yes, it is.
we have a scramble that we need to scramble now.
It makes me wish that I could go back in time and talk to women from way back. Okay. When I was at Cal State Hayward, which is now Cal State East Bay, um, I was working on my master's in history. And I had to go up to Berkeley to go to their library and find manuscripts so I could work on my thesis. So my thesis
Ah,
was female teachers in the Bay Area from like 1852 to like just before the 1900 mark. So
oh wow,
late,
exciting.
yeah. So the late 1800s. And I studied three fascinating female teachers. The first one came across from the East Coast, went around the South American Cape, the
Right,
traveled
I
by boat,
know.
sorry, I'm forgetting my geography right here. But anyway, went around, came up to California on boat, documented all that, went to Gold Country, and was pretty much the teacher and all her challenges with, wow, that was interesting. And then there was another one whose diaries, and she's the one that I really am fascinated by because she was in the 1870s and she was a student at Stanford. So Berkeley and Stanford
Wow.
started approximately the same time, 1870, 1871-ish. My dates might be off. It's been a while since I've written this thesis. So anybody who wants to correct me, please do so. But I could relate to this woman. She didn't like to cook. She didn't like to clean. She was very independent. She liked to travel. She had I think it was her boyfriend at the time. But she wasn't really like, the traditional woman, and she was very educated, and it was a co-ed when Stanford and Berkeley started. They were co-ed. It was not this, men's school, women's school stuff. And then the third teacher, her name was Clara Burt. She taught in Santa Clara, San Jose, and she was talking about the electric trains and how electric trains. I mean, it was a fascinating time looking in their diaries and their letters and that kind of thing. And because of me doing my master's thesis on these three women, I thought, first off, these girls had balls. Like they just,
Oh,
like
definitely. That's
they were doing some, some really great things, and standing on their own, doing their thing. But I remembered thinking, so women haven't always been in
no,
the second class status. They've
no.
been equals, but then what happened, right? And then we hear about Rosie the Riveter during World War II. Makes me wonder because women went back into the home front when the story that we get is the men came back from war and the women went back home. But I wonder if the Rosies of the Riveter era, they also had the kids, and I wonder if they were like the women in COVID where they're like, okay, I got to work and I got the kids and I got like, oh my gosh, yes, you're back home, great, you work because this is just too much. And
No,
I don't know. I
and
wish I could
I
go
think
back in
I think
time
there
and
are
talk to
elements
them. Yeah.
definitely.
But you're right. We are on the precipice of some major shift because I think the folks that are leaning toward more traditional roles, um, they want to go to the path of least resistance because, quite frankly, when things are really tough, you want to go the path of least
Yes.
resistance. Yes, you don't want to push water uphill, right?
No, it's hard. And it falls back down on top of you.
And so I am concerned, Karen, that you and I are of a generation that, it may be a while before, like, will the young women now, the preteens, the ones that are coming up through, what is their fate going to be? Now, the cool thing is that they've got these things, they've got their
Oh
mobile
yeah.
devices and information at their fingertips, and we can do so much from home to earn
Which
a
is
living. But it's
awesome.
just it's just a fascinating time, and it will be very interesting to see how this pandemic globally, it's not just us, it's the whole darn
Oh, the
planet.
whole world. No, that's like an advantage, I think, because we're here, right?
Right. So what is your thought? What do you think the future holds for the workforce?
I'm
And
hoping that the pandemic, because of all the recovery we're going to have to do, will actually accelerate where we've been, right? And accelerate getting people to understand that they have to make the best use of, resources, right? And when that tide starts turning, and then you'll start to see, more women going into technical roles and those kinds of things, taking roles that they might not have before. But we're doing a lot to advertise that these are available, right? So and people like me getting out and talking to people like you puts it out on the air to say, well, if she can do it, then I could do it, right? And I think people really need to see that. Some people really need to see that and say, okay, I can do that.
Wow. That is so cool. That is really, really cool. You are amazing. So, what advice do you have for anybody of any age? I mean, gosh, your advice is so perfect for just everybody. It's not just women. It's not just leaders in businesses. It's not even age groups. It's like everybody. What advice do you have if they want to excel and be heard and foster a positive, supportive environment?
I have 6 pieces of advice.
Woo!
I'm
Okay,
still
let's hear some.
standing, okay? And I'm determined to push for change. Don't let other people dictate what you can and can't do. Be just like Jennifer and do whatever you want, okay? And go for it. When people say no, don't hear it, right? Just keep going for it because, other people can't dictate. If you like it, then do it. 2, never stop learning. Ever. Okay, just keep going. I went back after being out of school and got my MBA. I think I was out of school 15 years and got my MBA. Loved it. It was marvelous. Do it, right? So, and like Jennifer, she's got 17 careers as near as I can tell. She's doing like at least 5 of them at the same time. So, never stop learning and never say I don't know that. You can always go learn that. It's easy. 3, and this is maybe most important, speak up. Start speaking up. If you don't like what you see, start speaking up. And I think, Jennifer, you mentioned it. I'm a Toastmaster. I've been one for 5 years. If you really want people to hear you, go to Toastmasters and learn how to speak up so people actually can receive the message you're trying to send.
Amen.
And I'm having a total blast now. I have my own podcast, right? And I wrote the book, right? And I got a ton of horror stories, right? But I'm like, where are the good stories? Where are the companies doing great stuff for women? And that's what my podcast is about. I interview companies doing great things for women. So if you want to know some of those things, you can listen to my podcast. It's free, right? That's my gift back to society and everything is, I'm going to do this podcast and share what people are doing. Because even if one company listens and takes one thing and implements it, we'll be a step further down the road. Find your calling and listen to the messages the world is sending you. If you told my little engineering brain when I got out of college that, I was going to be doing this work now, I would have told you, you are nuts. Okay? Not a chance. I didn't even want to go into management. I wanted to be technical forever when I graduated from college. Right? But listen, the world will tell you what you need to hear, right? But you do have to listen. And I look back and I can see this same thing pounding on me over and over and over again. And it's like, maybe I should have woken up earlier, but I woke up when I woke up, right? So that's all I can do. And create a space for yourself. Give yourself a space to think, to plan, to dream, to explore, and sometimes I take month-long camping trips in the summer with my kids because I can.
Cool.
And that's a total unplug. And I actually wrote part of the book on one of the trips, so it wasn't a total unplug, but you know what? When you go out and you experience what other people do and you walk through the rainforests and you take the boat rides and you watch killer whales, different parts of your brain start connecting and they can connect ideas that you would never connect in the office or in your home now, right? So create space for yourself away from everybody else. It's not about the kids. It's not about the husband. It's not about the work. Give yourself your own space, because that's where creativity really starts to happen and get nurtured. And often women say no. I give to everyone else first and not me. Carve some piece out for yourself, for you, because it's really, really important.
Yeah, yeah. Firefighters, they are taught to take care of themselves first before they rescue others. Because if they are
Women
just
are
rescuing
not
others,
taught this.
you can't. Doctors, nurses, you've got to take care of yourself first before you, like, just like on the airlines, put the mask on first before you
First, that's
start.
right.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Good job. Anything else?
No, I think that's all I can do.
Dang, that's some golden nuggets right there. You are amazing. Wow.
Thank you.
You really are just, I can't help it. I can't help it. This is, see, it's like I got a new friend and I'm like a huge fan. I cannot wait to finally
Now, I
read
may
your
have to
book.
call you back about my marketing, but that's a separate discussion.
Hey, I'm delighted to assist whatever I can do. You know, it really is so amazing what you bring. I knew when I first chatted with you, I liked you, but now I really love you.
Oh,
Like
cool.
there's so much that you bring, and you do it in such a really problem solving, heartfelt space. You're
That's
using
I'm
your
born that way.
engineering mind to solve the problem, not to go you and you. Like, you're like, okay, here's the problem, here's how we solve it, here's how we bring it all together, cool, here's the puzzle solved. And it's like, bing,
And
brilliant.
that's I can't make it not do that, right? And the brain does what it wants to do, and that's what it wants to do. So
Yeah. And you're tapping into your superpowers so you can help others tap into their superpowers.
that's
And you mentioned earlier, you said, we're going to make it a party. You're absolutely right. When you're a project manager or program director, they don't necessarily report to you. You
oh
have
no, most
to,
of the time most of the people I've worked with don't.
right?
And they always are like, "What are you here for?"
Yeah. And,
It's like,
and you
I'm
got to
gonna
make
make your
them,
life happier.
right? And they have to understand that this is the goal. Like you said earlier, you would give them this, and then they'd be here, and it's like, yeah. Well, clearly they were encouraged. They were
Yes,
encouraged to shine their brilliance, and let's celebrate this along the way, because we're all going to win when we
yes.
tap into a win-win-win solution of
It's
community-minded,
powerful.
bless mixed with. And what's also so cool about what you teach, individual mindset versus community mindset. You're right. Removing the gender removes a lot of this. My
I tried
husband,
to teach it with men and women, and
yeah.
it doesn't make sense to some people because they're like, I'm not that way. That's not me.
Well,
But when
also,
you take those labels off and you go, oh, that's me. And then sometimes I'm over here, that's me.
right?
And then you can go, oh, they think like that? Well, I never would have known that if you hadn't told me. That doesn't even make sense to me, right? Because I think totally different. That's why you know that, and it's like we keep crossing each other.
Yeah. And my husband loves to tell me this. Every time I point my fingers, I have three fingers pointing back at myself, right? So that's not the
Oh, that's a
approach.
good. I hadn't heard that. That's good though.
Yeah, that's not the approach we want to take. It's like, oh, but you're right. It's like the community minded in conjunction with the independent minded. How can we make them blend? What you're teaching is how to make a positive workplace, but also too, what you're teaching is also going to save marriages and
I've had
help,
quite a few people say that.
right? And even the dynamics within families. How divided are we at this present moment in the world, in our
Oh,
country,
there's so much of
where
this
we've
going
got a
on.
lot of this going on, but it's like the independent minded versus the community minded. How can we all see that perspective? How can we see that we're all connected, and that even when you're independent minded, you still have to rely upon your
Other
community?
people. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, we are not an island. Yeah.
No,
So
not.
fascinating, fascinating stuff. Well, everybody, you know what? I hope you have enjoyed the golden nuggets and pearls of wisdom that Karen Cornwell has shared with us. What a treasure. Okay, show us your book again and tell us how people can get a hold of you when they want to hire you and have you help their businesses. Tell us all.
So the easiest way to do this is to go to my website, my book website, which is you can't fix what you can't see.com. Okay. I tried to make it easy. Just don't put the apostrophes in. They don't work. And from there, you can get to any of my other websites. And I'd love it if you hooked up with me on LinkedIn. To find me on LinkedIn, it's Karen F as in Frank Cornwell, because apparently there are a lot of Karen Cornwell. So, and then you can get to all the other places for that place. And I love speaking at companies. And I'm actually getting really darn good at speaking virtually now because, we've been doing it for, well, a year, right? Oh, we're just about a year into it. So I can do that either way because I think that's really powerful because once you wake people up, they don't go to sleep again, right? Once you really wake them up, they're like, well, wait, no, wait, there's more. We need to do some things. And they can propel you forward.
Wow, that is so cool. And then if people want to send you an email or contact you, do they do it through your website?
Yes, there's a thing on the website. It comes right to me and I'll get right back to you. So, and hook up with me on LinkedIn because, I love to hook up to people and I post a lot of things on social media. So if you need a little tidbit now and then, that's what you want to do. And I have a newsletter on the website, right? And I put out, several tidbits a month. Actually do one newsletter a month, but it has lots of tidbits in it because I don't like to be spammed any more than anybody else does.
Right. Right. All right, everybody. Well, thank you so much for joining us with this episode of Connecting with Jennifer Filzen. I hope you took away some great stuff about how to communicate with your team, how to lift everybody up, and how to really just foster a fantastic work environment and home environment and just relationships in general. So thank you, Karen. And
Thank
thank you, everybody,
you.
for watching. This has been fantastic, truly.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. It's been a blast. You said it was going to be fun, and it was.
I told
I
you.
love it.